Right, my name is Ron Wade. I was born and bred in Abergele. I was born in 4 Clwyd Avenue, close to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is on the corner of Clwyd Avenue, and it was built in 1934, the same year as I was born. The Bishop of Minerva came and opened it, and the town was crowded with people. From Clwyd Avenue, my father rented Clwyd Avenue, and we moved then onto Derby Terrace, next to the across the road to the present fire station. While we were there, he bought the house, and we lived there for a number of years, and we were quite happy there. He made a lot of improvements. In fact, during the war, we had evacuees staying with us, and we had soldiers that came over from Dunkirk, 2 soldiers. They asked us if we could billet them for about a month. After that, I lived there for a number of years and enjoyed it. My friend was John Parry Disraeli Villa, and he took me to school for the first time when I was 4. The pair of us just walked up the Sea Road and crossed the main road, something he wouldn't dream of doing now. And he introduced me to all the kids and the teachers, and we got on fine. The school I went to was the Church of England, it was called then, school. It is now the, what do you call it, the community centre. Whilst I was in the national school, I met a number of friends who I've still got now, and I'm getting into my 86th year, and I see them quite often. We had a lot of fun in the school. There used to be one teacher there called Mr. Nicholas, and he was a bit bad-tempered, but he wasn't a bad fella, really. I remember one day we were in school and we were talking, and he would never get out of his chair to come and correct you. But what he used to do was throw the board duster at you, or a golf ball. When he threw the golf ball, we saw it coming, and John Parry, who I mentioned earlier, ducked. And when he got up, the ball hit the ball at the back and hit him at the back of his head. Oh, there was a bit of a ruction about that. And then the headmaster was a gentleman called Mr. Williams, who lived in Towyn. But I think he was only really a teacher because he hadn't got much idea of administration. As soon as the war ended, he retired and he went to live in Towyn or Belgrana, I can't remember. Anyway, he went there. But after that, I went to the other schools, and I stayed in the other schools, in the higher schools, until I was 16, and I took the O-levels. I had 5 O-levels. I wasn't very bright, to tell you the truth. I was good at running and jumping, but not very good at writing and arithmetic. Anyway, I got the O-levels, and I went to the Tech in Wrexham, where I studied bakery and confectionery, so I could go into the family firm. But I had been working from when I was 7 in the firm. My father said, you know, we're not, the Wade's motto is we carry no passengers. So I went and I did no end of things, and I learnt a lot. I learnt about life mainly while I was in school, which was a big thing. A lot of children don't seem to learn about life now. But there's a lot, making friends and all that is a big thing in life. After that, I went to the Tech, and I was there for 2 years, where I met a number of very nice fellas, and I still see a lot of them now, though about 4 or 5 of them have passed on since. The 2 teachers that taught us there were Mr. Nash and a Mr. Hawkins. They're both dead at the moment now. They were very, very good teachers. And then they used to let us, or make us, shall I say, try in competitions that I tried in the Royal Welsh Show to make marzipan flowers, and I won first prize there. And I tried in the Baker show in London with a friend, Elwyn Roberts, from Pennygroes, and we had runners-up in the bread making, which was quite pleasing. We didn't expect to get anything there, but we had runners-up there. The tech from Manchester beat us. They were exceptional. But we had a good day there, and the only thing, we travelled, left Abergele on Wrexham about 8 o'clock in the morning. We got to London about 12. Then we had to rush to the exhibition. We did our piece. Then we had to rush back and catch the 6:30 train back to Abergele, which was another 4 hours. So I didn't get back till 10 o'clock that night. When I left the tech, I was called up to do my national service. I was first posted to Aldershot, where I joined the catering corps, the Army Catering Corps. And I enjoyed it there because I was playing football and cricket there all the time. But really, it was a wasted 2 years because I didn't do a lot of cooking or anything. I was just footballing and cricketing and having a good time generally. Anyway, when I was in Aldershot, they sent me to Cambridge Military Hospital, where I became a dietitian. But after that, I went from Aldershot to Catterick, where I went into Catterick Military Hospital there, and I was a dietitian, and the sergeant there was a fellow called Staff Sergeant Stone, and whatever you said to him, he believed. And because all he was there, he was passing his time until he was demobbed. While I was there, the Korean War broke out, and a few of our staff were sent there, a few of our cooks were sent there. One of them was killed, poor chap, while he was in Korea. To join the Army Emergency Reserve for 2 years, which was where I went to Brecon to do a bit of, well, I didn't do cooking there. I taught the other kids or the other men what to do when they were doing cooking and different things like that. You know, generally we were having a good time. And really, my father said it was a waste of 2 years for me. I would have been better working at home. But my grandfather, I must mention it, came originally from Liverpool. He was a foreman on the Liver buildings, and he worked for a firm called Blaine's of Liverpool. Now, he became very friendly with David Roberts, who was Lord Clwyd's father. And they were talking one day, and Mr. Blaine said to my grandfather, "Listen here, Tom," he said, "you want to open your own business, you're not going to make any money the way you're carrying on like that, just struggling." So he decided he would. He said, "Where shall I go to form a business? I don't know, enough about it." Well, this Mr. Blaine said, "I know of a little place on the North Wales coast. It's called Abergele." And my grandfather said, "I've never heard." Anyway, he carried on. He said, "Go there," he said, "and have a look round." But the name of the business was Wade of Abergele, and the place was called the Grosvenor Cafe. And we bought it, well, my grandfather bought it off 2 old maids, the Miss Midlers, I think they were called. Previous to that, it had been Littler's Flour Mill, and then it became Miss Midler's Tea Rooms. And they were only playing about. Anyway, my grandfather bought it for 850 off them. Borrowed £200 off the boss he worked for in Liverpool. He borrowed £200 off my grandmother's sister, and he had a loan. And after 18 months, he paid the lot back. But they used to open 6:45 in the morning and close 11:45 at night. And there was a pathway between us and a little shop called the Tea Mart, Paris Tea Mart. So the council, Abergele Council, were a bit harder, and they asked my grandfather if he'd buy the entry between the 2 shops up and extend his building, and that's what he did. So that we joined up with the Tea Mart. The Tea Mart was quite a busy place. They sold every kind of tea you could think of. But it was run, Mrs. Parry was an old lady, and she had an assistant called Alwyn. And very often they'd get the teas mixed up because they were a bit muddled as they got older. But they did, and they were very good neighbours. In fact, talking about neighbours, all the shops in Abergele helped each other. There wasn't one that didn't put themselves out. Cumberland used to borrow flour off us. Elwood Cafe used to lend us fat, and that's how it went on and on and on. And the busiest days were market day and fair day. Well, fair days was the third Wednesday in the month. There were a number of farms used to come, and they were very good customers. The farmers have always been really good with us. We were, you know, really pleased with them. And they used to come, the markets used to close at about 8 o'clock, and then they'd come for dinner. And the fairs on a third Wednesday in the month, they had stalls along the street in Abergele. And they sold everything you could think of. Then my grandfather died, so the business fell on my father. So he was looking for a partner, and he was glad when I was demobbed, I became interested in the business. And but I should mention now that the business has been going for 85 years, nearly 86 years. I remember a butcher's business that came on hard times. And, you know, they thought he would have to close down because bankruptcy was a big thing in those days. It was like a disgrace to be bankrupt. And the butcher at the end of the town said, "Don't worry," he said, "I'll lend you the money to get you out of trouble." And he loaned him quite a bit of money. And he said, "Well, do you want anything as a guarantee you'll get the money back?" Yeah, he said, "Give me the deeds of your shop." So he gave him the deeds, and he paid him back within 3 years. But the butcher who loaned the money originally said, "I don't like to see any empty shops in Abergele." He said, "If it's empty, it means the towns are dying." So he said, "If we help each other out on the shop, it'll bring more people in because there'll be more shops for them to view and look at." The chain stores started to come, and E.B. Jones Grocers was one of the first chain stores in North Wales. And E.B. Jones came from Abergele, and he was keen on cutting the prices, shall I say. He was a very, very good businessman. But he also wanted the shops to be full. And after he opened E.B. Jones's shop, he then bought what is called the Mill. I think it's a motor place now, automobile place, up Chapel Street. And it stands back off the road. Well, he bought it and he turned it into a flour mill and became Littler's Flour Mill. And they used to deliver flour by horse and cart to St Asaph, Rill, Colwyn Bay, Sandin. When he went to Colwyn Bay and Sandin, it was a day's outing. I don't know. And then my grandfather bought the shop off him, and he just concentrated on the mill. And then E.B. Jones bought the mill off Mr. Littler. And then another grocery was Evan Morris. He lived in Bryn Hyfryd, and he owned Morris and Jones in Liverpool. And he did very well. He was going around all the shops canvassing. Anyway, Mr. Blink introduced him then to Lord Clwyd. He wasn't Lord Clwyd then, he was John Herbert Roberts. And he introduced him to John Herbert Roberts. And John Herbert Roberts said, "Oh yeah." And he was just about to become the Liberal MP for this area at the same time. So they sort of had a chat about it. And he said, "Now I want you to do this." And Lord Clwyd did. He said, "Now I don't want you to open Sundays. I don't agree with Sunday opening." So at the time, Manchester Sanatorium had opened, and They had all the children there with TB. So the people used to come from Manchester on a Sunday, visited them, and there was nowhere for them to have a drink or anything. So what they did, my grandfather said, well, look, I'll open a cafe and you can have a cup of tea and a scones, and just to put you on over the time, you know. So he told Lord Clwyd why he was doing it. Oh, he said, well, that's really, I'd never thought of a thing like that. There was no League of Friends then, but he said, carry on, he said. But Lord Clwyd was a temperance man, and he was against pubs and everything opening on a Sunday. But he gave the Ship Cafe, well, it's the Ship Cafe it was called, as the pharmacist, I think now, on the corner. It used to be the library in the Ship Cafe, the public library in the Ship Cafe. And he went there and he had a chat about it. And he said, I'm going to give the building to the youth of Abergele, but there's not to be any alcohol sold, whatever, on it. And the men can play snooker, and the men had to play upstairs, because I don't want the children in upstairs and breaking them. And the children can play ping pong and what do you call it, billiards downstairs. And then we'll sell lemonade, and it was all sorted out. Eventually I became one of the governing body of the Ship Cafe, but that was coming on a bit later on. But anyway, he got it going. So my grandfather was talking to David Roberts about, and he came to see him one day when he came to see his son John, Lord Clwyd, and he said, how are you getting on, Tom, with this business? Fine, he said, we're really busy. He said, you know what, my son is going to put a lot of timber in Capelman and Sayan, in Llanfair Road. But you know, he said, the expense of bringing the timber from Liverpool to here, and Lord Clwyd said, well, he'd got a friend called Bob Traction, who'd got a couple of steam lorries who were going to go to Liverpool, get the timber and bring them back. So my grandfather said to him, well, listen here, why don't you load a boat in Liverpool on the docks and send it to the Wartime Harbour? So that'll be one trip, there wouldn't be a number of trips. Get Bob Traction to go there with his lorry, and he'd do it all in a day or two. So he said, oh, that's a good idea. So that's what he did. And he brought anyway, Lord Clwyd was very pleased about that, and with him doing it for Manchester, he became quite friendly with my tide. And then one thing led to another, and he said, oh, I want you to deliver bread to my house every day. So that was fair enough. Going back in time, you were not allowed to use fresh eggs when making cakes. It was, during the war, it was all powdered egg, and that, but you were more or less forced to use them. And one day, a farmer came down from Eisteddfod, and he came and he said, oh, Mrs. Wade, I've had a terrible day. I've had to throw so many dozen eggs away. Why is that? Oh, she said, because they wouldn't go through the little, there's like a disc to see that they were the right size. Oh, well, she said, don't throw them away, it's a pity to waste it. Bring them to our bakery and we'll use them here and we'll buy them off you. Oh, they were good. So he must have told a number of other farmers, because loads of farmers brought small eggs. Anyway, they decided they would make eclairs with them one day, so they made eclairs. And that the following day, an inspector came from the Ministry of Food, and he looked and he said, these eggs have been tested, these cakes have been tested, and they're made with fresh eggs. I'm going to prosecute you about it. Oh, he said, we're only helping, you know, save waste. Oh, but that's a poor excuse. So they took my grandfather and my father to court, and they said, in front of Lord Clwyd, and he said, listen here, you've got to go to court and you've got to stop this. And then they explained the reason why they were doing it, because there was so. And Lord Crewe said, oh, case dismissed. And the clerk of the court at those days was a gentleman called Mr. Painter Rees, and he lived in Samver. Now he came and he said, you can't just cancel a case dismissed and all that and cancel the case. He said, they've been prosecuted, you've got to fine them. So Lord Crewe said, oh, righto then, it's silly, but I'll fine them 5 shillings, which was quite a bit in those days, just after the war. Anyway, they were fined 5 shillings. The following day, Painter Rees came down from Samver, bought 6 of the biggest boxes of chocolates he could get hold of, and ordered no end of things. And Lord Crewe came down as well, and he ordered a load of. But the thing was, what they were ordering were on rations, and you had to give points and things like that for them. Well, they hadn't got enough points. So my grandmother said, what am I to do? Will you prosecute? No, they said, we won't mention it. We'll just buy them. And for years until they died, Painter Rees came and bought 10 boxes of the largest boxes of chocolates we'd got in the shop. And Lord Crewe, he bought chocolates and gave them, not big boxes, but small, but gave them to the poorer people in Abergele. And Lord Crewe always said, now listen here, Tom, we're having an election the following week. So I want you to tell all the people that work for them, unless they vote Liberal for me, they'll all be out of work on Monday. Just to frighten them. So he did that, but you know, I think it was only said as a joke, really. But he went on and on about it. And anyway, after the eclairs, we made many other cakes with it, and fresh eggs, and the inspectors never came near. But during the war, everything was on, petrol was on ration, flour was on, the amount of flour you could have was according to the number of points and books you brought in. Well, in the shopping way, the staff used to say, oh, I'm not going to cut them out with the scissors and all that. They used to tear the page out and put it in the points book. And then they were tied to the shop, really, because they couldn't go anywhere else because we got the points. And then they used to get all the points every second month, I think it was the second Monday in the month, and take them across to the food office, which was now the Old People's Club by the church. And they used to be there, and they used to count them, and then they used to send them to, it was Spiller the Millers in those days, and then they used to allow you to have flour. Well, we were having, you know, 20 or 30 bags of flour they were bringing in, and it was crippling these poor fellas that were carrying from the wagon in New Street through to the bakery. So we had a chat, and they decided to buy a flour tank which held 40 ton of flour, and it was blown in the back lorry onto it and fastened it with a pipe, and they blew the flour in, and they used to load 40 ton in 20 minutes, half an hour. And then all you had to do, you just switched on the clock, and it would give you the right amount of flour. Whatever you wanted, it would just the right amount of flour. So, and then anybody in the town that was short of flour or used to come and say, hey, can you lend us a bag of flour? Yeah, don't bother bringing it back, just pay us a £5 for it or something like that. Otherwise we'd be fiddling with bags and that all the day. So, and then after that, I did a bit of black market with, that was with eggs and sugar and different things like that. We used to know a fella that worked for E.B. Jones, but he opened his own business just outside Oswald Street. And he said, you know, I've got plenty of fat and sugar, but I can't get eggs and things like that. So they used to say, if you can get the eggs down here, so we made it, and then they used to we used to have a 410 car. We used to put the eggs and all that on the back and put blankets over them. And then they used to have to drive. It was a Sunday's work every other Sunday. I used to drive from Abergele to Llanfair, Llanfair to San Sannon up to Ruthin over to the Horseshoe Pass, and into the shop just outside Osler Street. And then he'd take all our stuff out and put fat in and sugar in and margarine, and I'd bring it back. And I wondered how we got points to get petrol and ration books. And he said, so anyway, Slater, the fellow called Harry Burge, and what was his name? Alf Knowlson, I think it was Alf Knowlson. I won't swear to it, but I think it was the old man Knowlson. And they said, you bring it here and we'll sort of, as long as you're not doing it to make a fortune out of it, as long as you're doing it to help the town. So they let me have the petrol. So I used to take it. And then I thought, well, the police will know about this one. So I saw Sergeant Shone, he was the sergeant in Abergele then. Oh, he said, I didn't know a thing about it. But I don't know a thing about it now, and I won't know a thing about it for the next couple of years. He said, I'm dumb, as far as that's concerned. So it went on, and we were dealing in the black market for about 2 or 3 years. But it was all done for the benefit of the town of Abergele, you know. And another thing we used to do, we used to make chocolate Easter eggs. And we used to get Lindt chocolate and some of the chocolate. And there was a fellow called Fred Farrington. He used to be able to get it without points. And I used to have to go to Chester to get the chocolate from there. We bring it back to Abergele, and then I'd make chocolate, or my father, myself, and all of us would have 2 or 3 days just making nothing but chocolate Easter eggs and join them together. And then we'd send them back to Lindt or whatever, and they'd send us the money. I would like to talk about the variety of customers that came to Wade's, various kinds. I must tell you this, when my grandfather first started and my father in the shop, they made 12 loaves, 6 large cakes, and about half a dozen small cakes. And as time went on, until we, in the end, we were making 42 varieties of bread, and, which amounted to well over 150 loaves. And then we had no end of different types of cakes, and we made sweets and chocolates and different things. But I'll tell you about some of the characters that came now. But first there was a gentleman called Avro. He was a captain, he came from Spain, and he was the first man to fly from Spain to North Wales, and he landed on the marshes. And the chairman of the town council was W.H. Jones, and he said, can we bring him to the cafe for him to have something to eat or something to drink? So my tide was delighted, and my father, that they'd have an attraction to come there. Anyway, they came, and it was Captain Avro, and he'd flown from Madrid to the marshes, and he'd landed here. I think from what they tell me, he'd lost his way a bit. That's why he landed here. But he was the first man to fly from Spain to North Wales. Anyway, he got friendly with my tide because we'd been giving him a cup of tea and chatting, you know how people... So what he did, he said, I've come over here and I'm going to see a man called Anson, John Anson. Oh yeah, my tide, I don't know him. He said, I can't. Well, he's in the industrial area of Britain. So they sorted out, and W.H. Jones took him there. And after he came to see my tidy, he said, you know what? He said, I'm joining with Anson. We're going to form Avro Anson Air Builders. And I'd like you to come to see it, the factory when it opens, or the air, whatever they call it, the aerodrome. And he came and he had a really good time there. And now another lot of people that came there was the Welsh international football team. Jackie Owen, the painter, paid for them all to have tea. They used to stay in the Palace Hotel in Rail, and they used to go about the coast. They used to go to schools in the afternoon when they were training for internationals and talk to the kids, and then they'd come. And Jackie Owen paid for them to have tea in Wade's. And we had more people outside the shop that day than we've had inside or anywhere. Oh, there were crowds on the new street. And in the end, they closed one lane of traffic and just had a single lane traffic going backwards and forward because there's so many come to see some of the players that came with Trevor Ford and a chap called Lucas. And I think Yori Hughes from Llandillas, he was the international goalkeeper. He came, and they all came and had tea there, but they spent more time talking and signing autographs than doing anything else. And then another gentleman to come was Bruce Woodcock, the British heavyweight champion. He used to train in the castle. Mr. Salt used to persuade them to come and train there, and he used to come and have tea or afternoon tea and have a chat. He was a big fella, and then he used to go across to the pictures. And then there was a film star that came here called Paul Mooney, and he made Commando Strike at Dawn, that was showing at Abergele Cinema. And he came, and who else was there? A girl called Yana. She was a bit of a singer. They used to all come up, as it was quite close to the cinema, they used to just come across the road. And my grandmother used to give Mrs. Ems, who worked in the cash box, and Mr. Ems, a free cup of tea and that during the day. So and then anybody that came, they used to say, oh, go across the ways and have a cup of tea. And then, who else was there? Oh, and Randolph Turpin, he was another one. And he became quite friendly with my grandmother. My grandmother always used to call him Mr. Turpin. He said, oh, don't call me Mr. Turpin, he said. I can't get used to it. Call me Randy. Well, she said, I'm not going to call you Randy because that could be a nasty name. She said, I'll call you Randolph. Oh, well, that's fine, he said. And he used to come over. All the girls used to be chasing Randolph Turpin because he had a bit of money and he used to treat them well. And he used to always come and buy boxes of chocolates and different things, or take them for a meal to Wade's and upstairs and different things like that. But he was good. And who else was there? Cyril Smith, the MP, used to come. And another chap that used to come was Morgan. He used to come in for a cup of tea. And what was his name? Morgan. I think he was a Conservative or a National Liberal. I think the only time he got up in Parliament was to open the window. He didn't do anything much, Morgan. Geraint Morgan, that's who it was. And there were quite a few. Amy Johnson was another one that came. She landed on the marshes. She was flying from Dublin back to either Liverpool or Manchester, and there was stormy weather, so she landed on the marshes. So the people in Badorin, came across the road and told her, oh, jump in the car and we'll take you to Wade's for a cup of tea while the storm subsides. And then, they were the main people. But there were quite a few other people of note that came at note at the time, but they've gone out of my mind now, a lot of them. Just think again now for a minute. I'd now like to talk about the marshes where Amy Johnson landed. The marshes is where the first ordnance survey was made. It was made from Abergele to Rhuddlan along the Rhuddlan marshes. Now the marshes are the fields that are on the left-hand side going from Abergele to Rhuddlan. They're known as the marshes. Now, they went from Abergele to Rhuddlan, and then they measured from Rhuddlan to Moylvra, which is a mountain at the back of Abergele. And then from Moylvra, they went up to Snowdon. And then from Snowdon, they went to Parry's Mountain in Anglesey, I think that is. And then from Parry's Mountain in Anglesey to the Orme, and then the Orme back to Abergele. And that's where... Now, another interesting thing, the main industry in Abergele was formed in the 5th century as a town, so it was a hamlet, or just a few houses before that. They formed the hamlet, and it was called Abergele. And they said, I think the population was between 700 and 800 people altogether. But anyway, the main industry then was, I thought it was farming, but no, it wasn't. It was thatching. The Davis brothers from Peel Street used to be the main thatchers for North Wales. They used to go to the marshes, cut all the reeds and the rushes down, bring them back, dry them all out, and then go around the different places thatching. And they were in demand all the time, the people from the marshes were. You know, so that was one of the interesting things. But when I did the Ordnance Survey then, there was interesting buildings that came to mind, like the Harp in Abergele used to be the old jail. That's where the old jail was originally. And what's it called? I think it's Lloyd's Chemist is there now. That used to be the Crown pub. And behind, on the side of it, there used to be a street which was Crown Court, where there were houses. And from there, there was the... and while I was mentioning about the ordnance, there was Tower Hill, which was at the back of between Abergele and Moylvra. It's a tower there that was built in the Elizabethan times. Now, the Tower Hill is quite famous because it was built because of the Scotties. They were Irishmen that used to come over in their boat and grab the girls and the young men and take them back to Ireland and get them to work as slaves, more or less, in Ireland. And they used to go to the tower and they could see if the boats were coming and all. They'd built another one in Flint, on Flint Mountain. And I think there's one either in Carnarvon or Portmaddock, but I'm not sure about that one. But they used to have them dotted along the coast so that they could spot if any of them were coming. Now, Tower Hill, on a Good Friday, was a very busy place. All the kids in Abergele used to go up there, take sandwiches and hot cross buns and a bottle of pop. They used to have a real good picnic, and they used to be squabbling and climb up the old rocks there and everything. Anyway, at the end of it, they used to set the whole of the place on fire, all the gorse on fire. And they used to be able to see it from Rhyl and Columba. They used to see it play. And then the fire brigade used to go there after and put it out. But it happened every Good Friday. All the queue, they were, once the fire started, the kids used to go mad. And then somebody'd bring a few fireworks and let them off. So it was all part of it. But some more of the old buildings was, the old house in Sea Road, which was pulled down when they built, what do they call, Derry Avenue, and there used to be an old house on the side there, and they never used to anybody live there, but always empty, and a lot of the old tramps used to go there and spend the night there sheltered. But then, now they pulled it down and they built the new places. There was the tower. Pentramount was a girls' school, and they moved to Denby, and then the council offices moved to the council offices were above the Midland Bank. There's a photo there. J.R. Williams used to be the town clerk. He was a solicitor, and there was the Midland Bank, then the town council offices, and then J.R. Williams, the solicitor above. And it was handy in there, but once the traffic started to get, they couldn't park, or it was in a bad, bad state of affairs. So, but I remember one young lad, a painter from Jackie Owen, he went, what was his name? Roberts, Dick Sing-Song's son. I can't remember. Something Roberts, anyway. Eric Roberts was his brother. But anyway, he went to the top of the tower and on a ladder and painted the weathercock for him. And everybody came to watch him, but they were all frightened of him falling, because one old fella, Mr. Wells, he went to repair. It used to be covered from the cinema up to Canal Dray or Barclays Bank, and they used to be covered so people could stand. And a fella called Mr. Wells went to do repair, and he fell straight through them. Sure, but there were a few nasty accidents there. There was another accident when a fella, David Vaughan from Chamberlain, he used to drive an old Austin, and he came down Samba Road, and he couldn't turn, and he ran into the bus queue and knocked about 4 or 5 people down. Knocked them all down. There was ructions about that. What else was it? There was the mill. Going back to the fire station, this was opposite the National School, between the beef filling station and Slater's. It was quite a long thing. They just had the bonfire engine there, and it had solid rubber wheels. But before that, they used to keep the horse-drawn fire station. There was a bell outside, and whenever there was a fire, they'd ring the bell, and the nearest fireman, would run out and grab a horse that was on the town. There used to be a lot of horse-drawn carriages, fasten them to the fire engine, and they'd be off to go. From there, they moved to Pentramount Park, on the side of the main building, between the park itself and Dundonald Avenue, so that they could go through the double gate and onto the main road. Now, they were there for a number of years. I think a fella called Di Hughes was the chief officer there, and he looked after it, and the firemen were all very good chaps there. Then they moved from there to Groes Lwyd, opposite, how can I tell you, Derby Terrace. And they seem to have settled there now for a while. They have quite a number of fire engines held there. I don't think they used to just be the one in the other one. But going back to that, after the fire station moved from the main street to Pentramount, there used to be it was made into an abattoir, and they used to kill all the animals there. Ooh, and you used to hear the pigs and that squealing. Ooh, and everybody used to, oh, it's terrible, oh, it's terrible. But they used to take the cattle there, and they used to be handy straight from the market into the abattoir for them to kill them. And then after that, there was Kimmel, there's another place, Kimmel Hall. Now, it was Kimmel Hall when Colonel Hughes had it, and then he sold it and made it into a hotel called Rumour Spa. And from Rumour Spa, but the Second World War came on, and they took it over as a military hospital, where the soldiers, a lot from Dunkirk, were there for a while. And then from Rumour Spa, it became Kimmel Hall. And from Kimmel Hall, it became Clarendon School. Now, there was a big fire in Clarendon School, and that's where they moved back to Bedford. The Clarendon School was a school for young ladies, and there were quite a few notable people there. The Prince, or the Crown King of Ethiopia, his children went there. And we used to deliver bread and buns and all that to them. They were very good customers. But they were Quakers, the people that ran it. And they owned, they were very, very good. The housekeeper was Miss Lee, and the assistant housekeeper was Miss Harris. And then when Miss Lee retired, they had Miss Stuber, a German lady. She became assistant housekeeper to Miss Harris. But they used to have 10 and 15 loaves a day sliced and delivered there. And they always used to have crusty cobs, and you used to have to take them straight from the oven at 7 o'clock so that they'd be hot for the girls to have them while you got up to there. But then there was Colonel Hughes moved to Kimmel Manor then, and he died, and his relation was Featherstone Haw, Colonel Featherstone Haw, Captain Featherstone Haw, who came there. And his first wife died. His first wife came from Carlisle, or from up that way, or the Lake District. She came, and she died, and then he married his housekeeper, which was Bronwyn Featherstone Haw. She became Bronwyn Featherstone Haw. But I'll tell you, I always remember Mrs. Featherstone Haw. I used to go there with bread, deliver bread there. And I was only 15, and she used to say, Mr. Wade, I've got a pleasure for you at Christmas time. Gee, me, I said, I'm going to do all right. I'm going to have a half-a-crown tip here. So I went tidy, went there and took the bread. She said, come with me, and we went to the music room, which is now the dining room in Kimmel Manor. And we went in there. And the next thing, she brought a cello out. And she started to play the cello. And she said, sit in that corner and just listen to this. So I was really bored, you know, I'm not a... And, you know, she was there playing. And the only thing I can remember about that now was seeing her sit there with the green bloomers, her legs apart and a green bloom. Well, and then she said, did you enjoy that? I couldn't say anything else but yes, but oh, it was a nightmare of it. Dear me. And then there was, oh sorry.
That's okay. One of the things we could do, yeah, we'll have a little pause, yeah. One of the things you could do is go back to the police stations.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mentioned...
Oh, I forgot the police station.
That's okay, yeah. So, when you're ready...
Yeah, I'll go about the... Yeah. Now, I forgot to mention about the police station. This was in Llanfair Road. The jail was underneath, and the courtrooms above, and the police station itself was on the side. Now the policemen I remember here were P.C. Halley, Sam Williams, the policeman, Sergeant Shone, Vincent Griffiths, and there was one other chap, D.E. Jones from Pensan. They were all policemen here, but they were all policemen that everybody respected, and they respected the people as well. Now, Sergeant Shone used to keep racing dogs, what do they call it? Greyhounds. And he used to like to race them, and I think he used to like to have a bet, but I don't know about that. And Sam Williams, he was a footballer at one time. He used to play for Wrexham in the days of Arthur Hughes, another fella, a market man, a farmer that used to come to the market, who used to be, oh, well, he had a number of lorries. In the end, he became a haulage man. But I'll tell you a little story about Arthur now. During the war, you were only allowed to have pink petrol in commercial vehicles and white petrol in private vehicles. So every so often you'd be stopped and they'd test you to see what colour petrol you'd got in. And Arthur Hughes, he had lorries, so he was a bit of a daredevil. So if his lorries were short on white, he'd put white in there, or if they were short on pink, he'd put pink. He didn't care. And he was doing that. And the inspector stopped him and checked him out. He said, "You've got the wrong petrol in this lorry." "Sorry," he said. He said, "I'm taking you to court." So he took him to court, and he fined him, I'd say about a £5. It wasn't a lot, but it was a £5. Anyway, years later, Arthur Hughes wanted to sell a car. So he sold the car, and who should come to buy it but the inspector that had booked him. So Arthur didn't forget, so he said, "Oh, yeah, I've got just the car for you." And he came, looked at the car. "Oh, ideal," he said. He said, "Well, before you settle on it," he said, "I insist you come and have a drive in it and see how it goes, you know. I don't want to sell you a dummy." Oh, very, very good. He said, "Right, I'll do that." So what he did, he took him from Colwyn Bay. He picked him up in Colwyn Bay, and he took him up into Sandroost. And he stopped there. "Now," he said, "I want you to drive it back, so you'll have the feel of the car." "Oh, right, oh, that's fair enough," he said. So the inspector got out, and as he was walking round, Alec locked the door and drove off. And he shouted at me, "You'll remember me in future, won't you, after what you did to me in the court?" And he left him in Sandroost. And then there was another about the home guard as well. They used to go to Coed Coch, which was that was a part of Featherstone Hall's property as well. And they were up there, and Miss Broderick was there then, and the Home Guard used to use it as the shooting range. So we always used to make a hot pot for the Home Guard and take it up on a Sunday. Well, Bill Cannell-Dray used to take it up on his lorry on a Sunday. We used to cook it and get it all ready, and then they used to take it, and my father used to go up, and he was in the Home Guard and helped to serve it. Anyway, one day they went to, Bill Cannell-Dray came up, and they were always rushing, they were always last minute. Bill Cannell, and he tripped over one of the guide ropes for one of the tents there, and the hot pot went on the floor. "Oh, hell," he said. So he did no more than put it down and scooped it all back into the pan with his hand and took it back there. Put it on the table. "Okay, lads, you can come and get it now." So my father was, "Hey," they said, "Bill, what's all these little green things in it?" "Oh," he said, "that's the spring onions." "Well, you know, they said it's the best hot pot we've had." They used to have cattle pens where the caravan park is there in Pensan. just by the railway station. What was it called? They used to have all cattle barns, cows, sheep, and they used to bring them through the town on fair days, going back to the fair days now, and bring them through the town, take them there, and they used to come from all, that's how the farmers knew Abergele so well, because they came to the markets here. I remember one day, a cow broke loose from the crowd that were being brought along with the drovers, and got stuck behind the counter in Wade's. Oh, and everybody was screaming and shouting, and no, there was no end of going. So what they did, there was a fellow called David Vaughan, the farmer, who lived in Shamberwen, which is at the top of Llanfair Road, and he took his coat off and put it over the cow's head and reversed it back onto the street. But there was some excitement that day when the cow got stuck behind Wade's counter. The girls were frightened to go in the shop, and the people were all sure running everywhere. But anyway, he got it out. Now, I forgot to mention about the castle. Now, the castle originally was owned by Bamford Hesketh. He built it. They were a Scotch family, and they came down here after, or just before the Battle of Ladysmith. And when England or Britain won the battle there, they made a big fuss of him, and he built the castle here. And when he was in the castle, he built a sewing room which was right at the end of the Maiden's Leap, where the Countess of Dundonald used to come to do a sewing room, and she could watch the boats going in and out, or going along there to Liverpool. She used to be able to sit there, that was her pleasure. And then she used to be able to walk down and have a swim in the morning in the sea. She used to go down through, which were market gardens then. They were run by a chap called Mr. Reed, a Scotchman. He came down because of the Bamford Hesketh being Scotch. Anyway, they carried on, and they were very much a family that kept themselves to themselves, really. They didn't mix with the town. The only thing they did do, they gave the bungalows opposite the church house in Groes Lwyd, they called the Bamford Hesketh, but a fellow a camp owner called Jack Winker paid a lot of the money towards it, or sponsored it, to make sure that they were done. Anyway, from the Bamford Hesketh's house, it went to, I can't remember his name, but only for a short spell. I'll say 12 months, it may have been short. And then after that, Salt sported. Just after the war, the Salt sported. Count Salt, Leslie Salt he was. And he was a real showman. And he organised the, knights fighting with jousting and all that, and he paid for all these professional boxers and showmen to come there, and he was bringing, and they had a cafe called the Stable Cafe, and it was a really smart place. We used to supply them. They used to have 100 dozen cakes a day in the thing, and an American came there one day, and he said, "Hey, I like this place here." He said, "How much do you want for it?" And Salt thought he said, "And the castle." "Oh," he said, "I'm not selling the castle." "No," he said, "I only meant this cafe." "Oh," he said, "I'll sell you the cafe." And he paid a fortune for it. And he got a fella, and he painted every brick. He put a number on every brick. And he moved it all, lock, stock and barrel, to the United States. And they built it there. And, it was a big attraction then. And then after that, Salt seemed to lose interest in it. I think he'd got a lot of money after selling this cafe, so it wasn't such a big business. He moved to Morecambe from there, and then but before that, just during the war, they had the Jewish people come there. What was it? From Germany, I think about Poland, one of the two places. They came there, and they put them up there, and they lived there till the end of the war. And they were nice people, but they never came to town or anything. They were a community on their own, you know. And when we delivered stuff there, you only could leave the bread by the door. You couldn't take it into the kitchen or anything. You just have to leave it there. I don't know, they may have been a religious group. I don't know that. But, you know, you never got to know them. And nobody ever came down. They only sent a check. You sent the bill, and they sent a check, you know. But then after that, they had, when Sonk was there though, before he sorted, they had jousting, and they had outdoor wrestling and all different things, anything to bring a few people there, you know. I remember when the boxers used to be there, it used to be 2 and 6 to go in to see them. And the traffic used to be from the roundabout on Ridland Road, you know, by Bethaglid, right through the main street, up to the castle. Dozens and dozens of cars used to be going. And the round table, cast in on the queue was so long that they used to go there selling orange drinks and all that to make money for the round table. But, going on a bit now, I'm going to talk about Wendy Williams, who started the International Eisteddfod in Llangollen. He wanted all the nations in the world to join together in peace and music. Now, originally, he worked in the solicitor's office in Wrexham. It was called Williams and Lloyd and Williams in Wrexham. And anyway, he met a girl from Abergele, Bessie who was an opera singer, Bessie Davis. And she was very keen, and he was keen on her. So they got married. And when they got married, it came to fruition that he would like to start the Eisteddfod. Now, he started the Eisteddfod in 1947, and his brother-in-law, David Davis, who was the pole vaulter from Abergele, who won the Championship of Wales in Cardiff. But he got hold of him and he said, listen here, you're a nurseryman, I want you to help me. So David Davis said, would you like me to fill the stage with flowers? Oh, he said, that's a good idea, that's nice and peaceful and everything. So he did that. So David Davis borrowed our van and he filled it with flowers that he'd grown in the nursery and what he bought from different people. Took it there, he used to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, take it to the Eisteddfod, decorate the stage, bring the car back, our van back, and wash it out. And it was a backing for us to use at 8:30. Now, Gwyn was a very keen musician, but his actual job was in the solicitor's office. But he was more keen, and when he decided to take over, form the Eisteddfod, I should say, he dropped being a solicitor. It wiped it out of his life altogether, and he just settled on being a musician and on the Eisteddfod, and became secretary and chairman, and he ran it very, very well. In fact, he used to give us, because we let him borrow the van, David Davis, he used to let us have 2 or 3 tickets to go into the Eisteddfod free. And he took us for tea in his own house, which was on just off the Eisteddfod ground. And I can't remember the name of the road, but it's as you're coming in from the Horseshoe Pass. He lived on that road there. Now after that, the Royal Welsh Show came to Abergele. It had been there in 1938, I think. I won't swear to the date, but I think it was 1938, before the Second World War. And then they brought it back again in the early 50s. and Abergele was full of farm. They had over 10,000 people come into Abergele. All the pubs were full. Everybody that has got a spare room were putting farmers up. They came from all over Britain. And it was one of the most successful Royal Welsh shows at the time. And it was held in Mice Canal, on the fields there. And the fields were owned by a fellow called Dick Jenkins. And he really made a lot of money out of it. But it was a well-run show, very well organised. They had tractors, everything you could think of to do with the farm, it was there. And I know we as a cafe, we used to open at 6:45, then serving breakfast. And the last farmers used to come about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night for supper, after they'd been to the Royal Welsh Show. But they used to have concerts at the end of the day's proceedings, and they used to have them in the fields there. Then they had the Eisteddfod there. I think they've only had the Eisteddfod once, but that wasn't in Maesell, that was just on the outskirts of Abergele, by a place called Henderbach on the Ridland Road. And it was quite successful, but I don't think it had the success that the Royal Welsh Show had. But that was a really good thing for Abergele. It put Abergele in, because the trains were coming to Abergele and stopping here. So all the farmers from all over Britain used to jump on the train and come to Abergele and go back. Because I think the trains came to, the railway started in Abergele in, I think it was about 1896.